Look at the way that some people report on this. It's fascinating. And I was interviewed, I think I mentioned this the other day, I was interviewed by a Politico reporter who was like, who I said, you know, who was writing a piece on O'Malley. And the angle was, why aren't people paying more attention to Martin O'Malley as opposed to Elizabeth Warren? And I said, well, I don't understand. Elizabeth Warren's not running. Shouldn't the question be, why are they paying more attention to Bernie Sanders? And he's like, well, Bernie Sanders can't win. Well, that may be true, but Elizabeth Warren, she can't win either because she's not running. And you're doing a story on Martin O'Malley, and if Bernie Sanders can't win, newsflash, Martin O'Malley can't win. That's just reality. It is possible, I guess, that Martin O'Malley has an infinitesimally small better chance than Bernie Sanders, because if something happened to Hillary Clinton or she decided to drop out of the race, that Martin O'Malley might be their second choice. And by there, I mean the establishment or all these voters who have no idea who he is. But it's more likely that Joe Biden would jump in, or more likely that some other establishment person would jump in. So you can't say it's ridiculous to contemplate Bernie Sanders as winning the Democratic primary and not say the same thing about anyone else. But this is how disregarded the idea of what Bernie Sanders advocates is in the establishment and in the Beltway media. And the irony of that is none of his positions are controversial to the American public. The idea of expanding Social Security, overwhelming support. The idea of universal health care, overwhelming support. Child care, overwhelming support. Debt-free college. I haven't seen the polling on that, but I imagine it's a pretty mainstream idea. Michael will look that up for me right now.
I am looking it up for you.
And to think, all right, so let me read this story from you for Politico. This is a different reporter. Jonathan Topaz. It's not your everyday Americans at Bernie Sanders' kickoff rally. That's the headline. It's not your everyday Americans at Bernie Sanders' kickoff rally. The long-shot presidential contender launches campaign from the People's Republic of Burlington. I mean, this is ridiculous. I want to compare this to something that Duncan Black at Atrios pulled the other day. I'm going to compare that headline with Fiorina talks and Iowa swoons, but will it last? Republicans in Iowa are starting to swoon over Carly Fiorina, a former Silicon Valley executive who is mostly unknown in much of the country. 7 paragraphs later, in paragraph 8, while supporters in Iowa noted that she had doubled her standing in state polls, it was a statistically insignificant change from 1% to 2%. Santorum also at 2%. 5% supported Mr. Bush. So they're swooning in Iowa. And by Iowa, we mean 1% to 2%. Maybe that's not even a proper measure because it's so small, it's almost statistically insignificant. It's probably within the margin of error. She could be 0% of Iowa could be swooning over her. When Carly Fiorina gives her speeches, in fact, every speech that she has given, not every, 90%, 90% of Chris Christie's speeches, Bush's speeches, Clinton's speeches, are they in front of everyday Americans? Or are they in front of people who are statistically so far embedded in the margins of income distribution and life experiences in this country that few, if any, of the people that hear the sound of my voice have even ever met anyone like that? These weren't your everyday Americans who came out to support Bernie Sanders on Tuesday. The self-described Democratic Socialist kicked off. Self-described Democratic Socialist. How many times have you ever read John Kasich is a proud conservative, espousing his proud conservative values, Rick Santorum. Jeb Bush is trying to argue he's a proud conservative. Yeah, he's self-described Democratic Socialist. I wonder if anyone's ever said self-described conservative. Has anyone even read? Because you know what the implication is there. I'm not disparaging him by calling him a Democratic Socialist. He describes himself that way. I don't want to be blamed for calling him a Democratic Socialist. That's how he IDs. I mean, this entire thing is written like a parody. He kicked off his long-shot run for the White House in his adopted hometown of Burlington, a lakeside city full of characters who might not have passed the pre-selection process for Hillary Clinton's tour of roundtables. Really? In the afternoon, a people's assembly of hundreds of Sanders supporters gathered in City Hall Park. Dreadlocked guitars played in the morning, and patrons browsed near the Hempest, which advertises itself as the largest organic hemp product store in the world.
Do they have that same description for some of the people that come to a Rand Paul type event?
Oh, come on, man.
Because I'll guarantee you could find those same type of people there.
Well, this isn't even the Bernie Sanders event. This is just people who have assembled before the Bernie Sanders event.
I mean, you could really do that for any sort of public space that someone's going to talk to. Just describe who's there before the event.
And then he goes on to talk about
ate a Dorito out of a bag in preparation for Jeb Bush's announcement.
Then he goes on to write, Sanders stuck, then jumps to later in the evening when there's thousands listening to Bernie Sanders. Sanders stuck to a familiar populist script. Familiar, but what? In other words, Sanders stuck to a tired... I mean, when was the last time Jeb Bush stuck to a familiar neoliberal script in saying there should be no interference in the so-called free market? No, you just don't hear that. You just don't hear it. Then he went on to, I don't know, bury the other stuff in the piece. Unbelievable. Really unbelievable.